Hi there, everybody. Today's project that I'm going to be working on is car seat covers. I don't like the way mine are. I'm sure many of you have experienced this. The mesh that the companies use uh, tend to get nasty after a while, so let's throw those away. Here's what we're going to be doing. Take your car seat off, obviously. Would be very helpful. I would hope people could figure that part out. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your seat cover, and you're going to trim all the way around it. You can see here where the mesh meets the front side. I wish to keep my front side, so I'm going to trim just the inside of the faux leather front piece. Now I've already done the big part, so I'm going to go ahead and do the smaller part right here, just so we can get going. Make sure you have all your supplies ready, ones that you need. I'm also going to be making some modifications to this. So I did the first seat cover, so I have pieces of that I will show you where it's at, how it works, and everything. I'm sorry about the lighting. There's not much I can do about it right now. Oh, I guess that did work a little bit. There we go. A little bit better. So, because personally I like to have natural light, and I've got my window right there, but I also use a small light so that I can get the detail works while I'm working on it. So I'm going to start to trim, like I said, just inside the front piece that I want to keep. I want to take the mesh off. If you want to sit there and take the time and unstitch it, because they use the edgers, there's a lot more thread. It's going to take you time. With the fabric that I'm going to be replacing, it's a thick canvas, so it'll last a whole lot longer. It'll be a lot nicer. You could do whatever fabrics you want to do. I like the canvas because it's thicker. It's more durable, especially when it comes to the sewing. It's a seat cover. It's going to be used a lot. You're going to be in and out of it, moving around, have your kids all over it, things like that. So just kind of keep going with that the best that you can. Use, again, whatever fabrics you want. If you want to add more cushion underneath, you can do that. There's lots of options you can do. My canvas I happen to already have at home, so it's nice and easy. I also find that for a lot of my sewing projects, especially when I quilt, that I like using bed sheets or just denim. I did make some car seat covers out of denim. Used several pairs of jeans, and I used the lengthwise of the legs and everything. Measured out my seat covers. I actually used the old seat covers I had as my pattern, which is what we're also going to be doing today. Is making sure we use it as a pattern. So there we go. That's around the bottom of the seat. And as you can tell, I left the straps that secure your seat cover underneath, and I left the spongy part, the elastic, just for the time being. Now, yesterday when I was working on the first seat cover, I went ahead and made my pattern pieces, but I'm going to hold this because I still need these pieces. I'm also going to be making a couple of modifications that I like differently. I have the toddler or child water resistant pads underneath, so it makes it difficult to tuck this in. You can't, because you have those unless you fold the back part down, and that ruins some of the reason for even having it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off as well. This is the little piece of foam that goes under your seat. We don't need ties anymore. And so I'm going to cut it off, and I'm going to cut it in half. Nice and easy. I still need it because I still need my seat to look good and to cinch down in between the seat and the backing. I still need it to be able to tuck in so that it stays nice. So take out, and a lot of this is going to be machine work. You want to have your setting on a zigzag and a little bit smaller, because that'll give you your strength and your durability, that it won't pull apart on you. I just took out the little foam piece that's inside. I'm going to turn it inside out. It doesn't matter because it's going to be hidden. Me personally, I like things to look a little better even if they're hidden. Flip it inside out so that you have your stitch piece right here. This is the manufacturer's stitch. It's just kind of like doing a pillowcase or something like that. And I'm just going to run the open edge, the half that I cut, I'm going to run that through the machine. Just real quick and easy. Just like that. And then I'm going to get the other side, the other one that I cut, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Take out the styrofoam, flip it inside out, flatten it, nice and easy like that, and run it under your machine. When you're sewing, make sure you hold on to your threads. I know you can't see it what I'm doing, and I'm sorry about that. I'll work on that at a later time. But hold your threads as you start to pull through, and I'm only doing maybe 1/4 of an inch hem. So kind of near the edge, but not too far. If your cut's not straight, that's okay. Cuts don't always go straight. It's just mesh. Again, it's not going to matter. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm going to run the other one through in just a second, but you're going to turn it back inside out, right side out. And that way, that funky edge won't even show. Again, it's on the underside, the inside. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, let me run my second one through. Use my strings on the other side so I can make sure it's gonna go, not catch and just sit in one spot. Now I'm not doing the back and forth stopping stitch because, and locking stitch is kind of like a locking stitch when you tie a knot on something. I'm not going to worry about doing that because the top edge, with it being inside out, it's not going to get snagged. And then the top edge, we're going to re-sew onto the seat, onto the front side of the seat. So I'm not worried about the top edge either. So it'll lock it automatically. Me personally, I don't turn my machine on unless I'm getting ready to stitch. Standard rule of large tools, pretty much. Okay, so I have both of my halves turned right side out. So they're right here. And then because we cut it just in half, I'm going to trim just a little bit more off of my foam. Doesn't matter which side you go on. I'm just going to take a little bit more off. Again, maybe 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to go inside the little pocket. So I'm just going to stick that down in there, all the way down. Just like that. And then I want it to be on the outer side because I have those cushions. So I'm going to, because I have stitch markings, MOC covers do, that's how they get their shapes and designs that they want you to have with their seat covers. Most of them are not just one plain piece, and that's okay. So because I have these stitch lines, I'm going to put my cushion just on the outside of that stitch line. You can see, I'll try to make it so you can see, here's the stitch line that they did, and I'm going to put it just on the outside. I'm going to put a couple of pins to hold it in place while I get my other one there, and until I move my cushion, my seat cover, to where I'm going to sew it to the machine. Let's put that in there. You can never have too many pins. This one I'm only using 2 because they're nice and simple and small. But you can never have too many pins. So when we get to pinning later, and I'm not going to sit and pin everything the whole way through because that will take time. It takes time to pin. And then to stitch again. I will walk you through at least the bottom half of the seat cover, and that seems to be the more intense part anyway. So put my pins in. And I did one seat cover last night, started it last night, and I finished it this morning. Went and put it on in my car, and it fit like a glove. It was beautiful. It was great. So, okay, now I have it pinned. I have it where I want it. So now I'm just going to run it under my machine and hold those threads. And I'm going to stay with the hem that's already on here because I don't want to alter how the back and the bottom meet. Where they have that joining part, I don't want to change that. I don't want to add pinches in there or any funkiness right there. So I'm just going to keep with the hem that's already there. And this one I am going to do my forward and reverse stitch so that it will lock my hem in place and basically tie off my pocket and hold it there. If you want to go back and forth several times, because it can be a load-bearing portion, you can do that, but I don't feel I need the need for that. So, backwards and forward again. And I'm going to pull it out. And I broke my one string, but that's okay. Again, I'm only going to show you pieces to it. So here's what we're going to do next. I'll have to rethread my machine in a minute. It's quick and easy, no big deal. So once you have them both done, your inside part is finished. That's the fix you wanted to do. So I'm just going to take this, because I'm doing another modification to my cover, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to set it aside for the moment. We'll get back to that. The modification I want to make is, you can buy these pocket units. This one I got at the 99-cent store. Granted, it was about $3, but no big deal. And you can get them at Target, you can get them at Walmart, anywhere else. This is one of those back seat pockets. We have kids, most of us, or things we want to pack in there. I take out my dogs, they're service pets to me, so I want to be able to keep water dishes and food and treats and their leashes, which just tuck right into these pockets on the back of the seat. One of my kids loves to put his toys in there. Another one likes to have games or books or things like that. So what we're going to do, I want to add this to my seat cover since I'm redoing it all. I don't like having these snaps and clips around. And then you have, at the bottom piece, you have this loop that fits over the seat and you tighten it down so it holds it secure. I don't like all of that kind of stuff. I want to make things simple. So I'm just going to cut it right off. And where I'm cutting it is on the underside, but I don't want to mess up my pocket unit. So I'm just cutting it where it meets, right under here. That way I can just take it and my top portion is still secured with the hem that the company already did. I'm not going to need these straps anymore, so I'm going to put them aside. And then I'm going to do the bottom part, same thing with the string. It has a different clip. It's got the zip tie kind of clip, so I'm just going to go below the knot. It's just a tiny knot. There's no point in trying to untie it. Take that piece off, put it wherever you want it. I like to keep strings and straps. You never know when you could use them for more shoelaces, another bag, anything that needs to be repaired, whatever sort of thing. So that'll go down in with my supplies at a later time. What I chose to do last night was I actually left, when I was stitching around, I left this corner open. You never know. Things happen. You might need to use this as a hook for something. Yes, it's going to be on the back of the seat. Yes, it's going to be low, but maybe you have a first aid kit you want to just hook there. Other kids with medical needs, just hook a little bag right there. It's fine. Just use, whatever hook you want to use. And then the other thing we're going to do is just set that aside at the moment. Again, I don't like tags. They're not necessary. So I'm just going to cut it off. And it's just one less thing for me to have to think about. Now, last night I laid out my fabric, and as I was cutting the one seat, I went ahead and cut out the pattern for the second seat. So I already have my pattern ready. What I did was, I laid out my fabric the way I needed it to be, and I folded it in half, just so I make sure, one, Saves on space. And 2, I get a full piece. That way when I open it, I don't have another seam going down the back of my seat. It's just one more thing that, you kind of have to look at and everything. So I used the seat cover that I took off. I just want to make sure I get my middle point right here, because we're going to need that middle point. So you want to make sure you have that piece. You can put a pin in the top, because that's the part we're going to need. Not to pin it together, but to mark where your middle is, because you're going to need to know where that middle spot is in just a minute, and I'll explain that in a moment. So I took the mesh off the back. How we cut it off, mine's all holes and stuff like that, shreds and stuff. It's kids, it's the back of a seat. Again, seat covers, they get used. Folded it in half. And then when I cut it out, you want to make sure that you leave enough room that you can do a hem. So, let me show this to you. I left about a 1/2 inch so that when I sew it, and this goes under and connects to the front piece, I don't run out of space and it gets too tight when I try to put it back on my seat. So I went ahead and did that. Once you have your pieces cut out of your old fabric, toss it away. You don't need it. You already know it's stretched out. It's not going to work. Sometimes I hold on to fabrics and I save them for later, because there's all sorts of different projects you can do with them. You can make bean bags out of them. You can use them for lining. You can use them for whatever various projects. Now, remember I said you needed that middle piece again. This is what we're going to do. That backing with the pockets, you want to find the middle piece of that as well. Nice and easy. Lay it over. Find the middle piece. You can put a pin in it if you need to. I've learned just to... Actually, I am going to go ahead and put a pin in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the back piece that I had. Oops. There we go. The new backing that you're putting on, whatever your fabric happens to be, just lay it out, open it up. And you're going to get your other piece, your pockets, and how they fit on is up to you. You can put it all the way at the top or most of the way at the top. That way the pockets are up higher. If you've got older kids, younger kids, you can have it more towards the middle, lower down, things like that. Depends on your preference as far as that goes. I wanted to have it kind of centered, but remember when you go down from the top that this is also going to be part of the headrest. Again, doesn't matter, your preference. And I'm going to go ahead and line it up to my middle spot. And you can tell the middle spot on your pockets 90% of the time because they have their start and stop stitch points. Now, most companies will do a crossover, and when you do edgings and borders and things like that, and you have that extra ribbon you go around like they do on companies, you want to have that crossover. That way you don't run short, and that way it doesn't fray, and it gives you a standard point. So if you find that spot on there, or fold it in half, get your midpoint. Either way you choose to do it. And then you're going to start to pin. You want to pin it. Again, you can't have too many pins. You're going to pin it in and around, all the way around, other than when you get down to your bottom piece. Now, I know that, like I did on the other one, and like I was suggesting, when you get to the holes, I'm just going to do a quick pin just to lay it flat so I pin it right at the bottom. You're going to want to do a lot more pins. I'm, at this point, doing about a 3-inch gap. I can go back and fix that and add a lot more pins in between. About a 1/2 inch would probably at this point, because it depends on your fabric. If you're using a mesh, you want to do a lot closer than that because it will stretch as you're sewing, and then you end up with the wrinkles and the bumps and stuff. If you're using a cotton, if for whatever reason you choose to use a polyester, I don't suggest it because they are flammable and it will melt versus just go up in flames. Heaven forbid that happens to your car, but it's still a possibility. When you get down to your circle bracket at the bottom, what I do to remind myself, because I just get into sewing and I tend to forget what my original plan was. So you're going to do a crisscross with your straight pins. Just a crisscross. That will remind me, see my crisscross right there, that'll remind me that I'm going to have that as a stopping point. And I'm going to have another one on the other side. And I'm going to continue doing that for my other holes. Before I do my other holes, I'm going to restart at the top and work my way down the same way. And then the other thing I'm going to do is to add a little bit of security is between the levels where my pockets are. I have pockets right here and I have pockets right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a stitch across and just a straight stitch. This one I'm not using a zigzag. I'm just going to use a straight stitch. It doesn't have to be really tight, being short stitches, meaning it can be a little bit looser because it's not going to be load bearing. It's just going to be to make it sit up against the back a lot nicer. If you leave it undone, it's likely that it's going to bow out with whatever toys, books, dog supplies you put into your pockets. So it's going to separate from the seat cover and kind of defeat the purpose of wanting to have it up and attached to the back of the seat cover. So I'm going to add a couple of pins just to hold it in place. This is just for placement. I'm not putting my pins where my line's going to be. But what I am going to do, because my top pocket has the elastics for pens and pencils, whatever, I am going to use a ruler and I'm going to measure all the way across. I'm going to measure from the bottom of that pocket. And because the style of fabric, all I need is a pencil to work with. And I'm going to measure from the bottom of that pocket, just make a straight line. And when I stitch, I'm going to do about 1/4 of an inch away from it. So it's not going to be that far away. But you don't want to go over the bottom of your pockets. That gets a little thick and some machines can't take it. I'm not going to worry about the other set because those pockets are already level across and it's easy enough to identify. Oops, let me get my pin in here. There we go. And let me do one more holding place pin. I'm going to go ahead and do that down here between the bottom 2 pockets. So there, that is now pinned and you can run it through the machine. I'm going to hold off on that just for a moment so I can show you how to pin up the rest of your items, and then you can take it at your time, get the pins done, and stitch through it. And that's really all you'll need to do is just follow where you have pinned. Be careful. I pin myself all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and move this aside. And that way you don't need the brackets, you don't need the buckles, you don't need all the ties and things like that. So I'm going to bring my front piece back up. Okay, now I did stitch. Oh, I stitched one side, excuse me. Short-term memory, it's all part of being a mom. Sorry about that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the side strips. Because the seats are designed this way, you have your front flat, you have your back flat, and then they do side strips to account for the sides of the seat. You don't want to mount your front to your back right away because it's never going to fit back on your car seat. So here's what I did, is when I cut it, there was already a stitch at the top where the company had joined it. So that made things a little bit easier for me. I was able to just take it off. It is an odd shape, it's going to be, because your seats are not straight lines. So don't anticipate having just a straight line. You're not going to have it. Your curvature, you're going to have a straight line that it will attach to the back section, but you're going to have a curvature going to the front, because most seats are designed with the extra cushion and the backs are always straight. So that's what we're going to do. And your curved edge is the one that we cut off. So it makes it easier by cutting off the pleather kind of stuff that that lets me know that's my curved side, that's my front. That's going to connect to this front section. So last night, that's what I did, is I had it all cut out. So I have my curved side, and I have my mostly flat side, but it'll still work out fine. If you want to make it more flat, you can. Actually, I'm showing you the wrong side. My mistake. So here we go. Now, what I ended up doing last night is, and this morning, is I chose to add a little bit more fabric. So I do have this extra stitch down here. It's fine. It worked out great when I put it back on my car. So I'm not worried about that at all. You're going to lay it out face front. So if you have a pattern or a design of some sort on your fabric, you're going to want that to match. It's going to pretty much kiss this other part. Before you stitch, have your two pieces together, your two sides. Remember I said company had it stitched together at the top. We're going to do the same thing. Give me 1 second. Actually, no, we'll wait. I can just pin it and go from there. I don't want to take up too much of your time on this video. You don't need a 4-hour video. So, just pinned it, run it under your machine, and it's ready to go. So the next step, make sure you know which side's your front, which side's your back. If you forget, you have your leftover piece from last night, or from your cutout. Where did I put it? Oh, here I put it. Excuse me, it's a little bit wonky here. There we go. So you can lay it on top. Make sure you know where you're going with it. More of my curvature is on the other side. So let's see if you can see that portion. More of my curvature is on the front side, and of the piece I cut, so I just need to flip it over. That way I know exactly where I am on my front side versus what's going to attach to my back side. And then knowing where my front side is. Now I know where my front is. That's going to be the side. Keep it in your head where you put it. That's why I'm holding my fingers there. And I know I need to open it to where my front side will meet the seat, the front of the seat cover. This gets a little bit tricky at this point, just because it kind of can be a lot to deal with and a lot to try to manage to hold in your hands. Use my table and stuff as much as I can. Now remember those stitches that we used on the back side, that's going to be our measurement to find the middle on this side. Now what I'm going to do to make it a little bit easier is I'm actually going to fold it backwards. So my front side is sticking out. Because then I can hold on to it and pinch it and then put my finger or my fingernail right where that center portion is that you're going to need. You're going to take your fabric piece, the one that you're adding to it, and you're going to make your first pin right there. Because I didn't sew it, I'm going to fiddle just a minute, just to make sure I get my hem where I want it to be directly in the middle. That will matter when you get to pinning down below, and it will get frustrating if you end up sewing it and then you're too short on one side and too long on the other. You want to be sure your midpoint is correct. That's very, very critical, very, very important to this project. Because it's a big bunch, I just rolled it, nice and easy. If it's a different kind of fabric, sometimes you can just fold it, quick and simple. Because mine's a pleather, it's a little bit more stiff. I like it like that, it's fine. I use the pleather because it also helps with water resistance. And this seat cover I got from Walmart. I believe it was $15 per seat cover. May have come in a pack of 2, I don't recall, because I've had these for a while now. They're from the Dickies company. And so it's got the Dickies label on it and things like that. And Dickies, as we all know, really good company. They make good stuff. But a lot of people nowadays will change their seat covers once a year, twice a year, something like that. I love these because they are the pleather. In the summertime, I will put a blanket or a towel on it because, yes, it's pleather. It gets hot, but it's a lot more stain and liquid resistant than just cloth. So I like it a lot better. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk my fingers around, making sure that everything is flat. I'm just going to keep walking my way around it, and I'm going to put my pins about ½ an inch apart. Same thing I suggested on the back piece with the pockets, about a ½ inch apart. If you're not that confident in your sewing skills, feel free to go closer. Again, you can never have too many pins. Now you don't want to pin lengthwise along the stitch where you're going to be stitching. Let me show you why. I grew up being taught, when I learned to sew way back when, I learned that you put your needles in the direction that you're going to sew. I think you can see that. What I've learned since then is you put them in parallel to perpendicular to where you want to sew, because when you take your machine and you run over it, you don't have to take your pins out as you go through your machine. You can, if you wish, take them out as you go. I go through my machine, and then every couple of pins, then I'll pull them out as I keep going through. That way I can remember exactly how far I've gotten and things. If your thread breaks or such, and you realize it a little bit later, several pins through, you haven't unpinned it. You don't have to go back and repin it. So it makes it a little bit easier. It depends on what your thread's like, what your needle is, things of that sort. So let me put that pin in the way it should be. And then I'm going to keep going just a bit more. That way you get the idea, you know what it's going to look like. More pins, less pins, doesn't matter. Now's always a good time. I'm a fan of music, so I either have the TV on with a movie I know or a TV show that I know, something like that. That way I don't get distracted. Sometimes, depending on how much you're sewing, it's nice to have that little eye break. For me, my TV's behind me. I've got a window in front of me. I love to look out, and lately a lot of people out walking, riding bikes. It's fun to watch the kids as they go by, things like that. And as you can tell, like I said, it's going to take a little bit of time to pin. So let me show you what I've done. And literally maybe only a quarter of the way down, if that. So here's my pins all the way, and then just keep going. Yes, you're gonna have this part bulk out on this side. That's okay, because that's the part where your seat's gonna be in between. You need it to bulk out, because when you turn it right side out, it'll flatten, and that'll be when you before you turn it right side out, you're gonna attach your back piece. And so that way when you turn it right side out, you have a nice clean hem. You won't even see it. It'll look good. You have your space where your seat's going to go, and then you'll have your back piece. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go down to the bottom section. That part gets a little more complicated. So I'm going to fold this in on itself so that I can show you how to do the bottom portion. Same thing. I already got my fabric from the other pieces that I had. This is half of the bottom, the elastic part from the bottom. This is half of it. So what you're going to need is to fold your fabric over, just like we did on the back piece, where you folded your fabric in half so that you didn't end up with an extra seam down the middle. You're going to want to fold it in half. That way you get half of it. Takes up less, makes it a little easier when you're cutting. And then you're going to make 2 of these. Just like we did at the top portion, you're going to put a hem right down the middle part. So I didn't do that. I did do that one ahead of time. So I already have my hem. I've already stitched it. And then what you'll notice is one side of your mesh is actually going to have a curve. That's going to be towards the middle point, towards where your bottom and backing meet, in that corner. That's where that curvature is going to go. So I went ahead and I made a curvature because I have my 2 stitches right here. You're going to do the same thing. And you want your curve, oops, I've got it backwards here. Your curve is going to go on the inside before you start pinning, because that's going to be the inside. And we're going to do the same thing we did at the top part. Find your middle piece. I find it's easier to do it backwards. That way I can grab that point. Hold it with your fingers. There's your middle piece. And because you already have the stitching done, you already know where that middle piece is for the bottom. Make sure that your seam that you stitched is facing up. That way, when you flip it right side out, you don't have to see that. And it's nice and organized. Just like you do all the rest of your, try to do the rest of your stitching. If you mess up, I do it all the time, don't feel bad. Just go back and do it again. It's not a problem. And then, same thing, pin all the way around. Start from the middle point. You'll see that I'm not going all the way and then on the other side, starting at one end and coming forward. You always want to start at your middle point. When you sew, also start at your middle point. Sometimes the fabric will shift where you thought you had it pinned, depending on your materials and stuff. Sometimes it will shift and move. You always want to make sure that goes to the end, not that you get a buckle right in your middle spot. Then you'll be really frustrated and maybe want to try to give up on it. Just don't give up. It's not worth it. It's more fun to get the project done and have everything completed, and then you can be happy about it, and you get to do your project all on your own. Like I said, for some of my sewing projects, and I actually debated on it, I use bed sheets. Why bed sheets? One, they're made of cotton, so they're washable, and they tend to be light, as well as they're durable. They're very durable. Your fabric doesn't have to be thick to be durable. Bed sheets are thin. How many times do you wash your bed sheets? How many times do you roll around in them? Do your kids throw them on the ground? You know, do you use them for different projects? I use bed sheets for a lot of projects. I use them as drop cloths. I use them for many sewing projects. I use them for different craft ideas. And you can get them at the thrift stores. Usually you can get a twin set of sheets, a full twin set, for $2 or $3. Queen set for maybe $5. And you can also use, which I will be in a little bit, I'll show you, the elastic from a fitted sheet. I pulled it out of a fitted sheet, and that's going to be the elastic that I actually use for this project. So let me get this pinned So it'll be a little less daunting when I show you what the next step will be. I have a pin box right here, but I also have a magnetic pin holder, which I love because sometimes my pins will be able to stand on end and it makes them easier to grab. That's just totally a personal preference. Okay, so I have half of this pinned up now. Remember, this is your bottom piece, and we're only going to work with the bottom piece at this point. I'm going to show you actually what the last step's going to be. The very last step. It will be, let's see if I can get this light so I can show you, using that elastic. So, still keeping this inside out. You still want to keep this inside out. So here's your seam. You know this is inside out. I'm going to grab the elastic that I need. Oops, threw the wrong thing away. And what you're going to do is this time you will start at one end. You won't start in the middle. You'll start at one end. Be sure you got plenty of elastic. Get it at the dollar store. It's nice and cheap. It works great. It works just like any elastic you would get at Joann's or Michael's or anything like that. And then what you're going to do is you have your elastic and you're going to fold over your edge. Just like this. You make sure you don't stitch it to your bottom piece of your front. Okay? You don't want to stitch it to that, but you're just going to give it a little fold. That way, if your fabric starts to unravel, like mine is a thick canvas, it will come undone. And I find that starting it with a pin holds my fabric in place, holds my elastic in place. As you work your way, now I'm not going to do it right now because it's easier when you're running through the machine. You're going to need to have stretch your elastic as you go. That's how you're going to get it to do its bunching. The other thing you can do is you can fold your fabric a little bit higher and make a pocket like you would see on the zip cord of a hoodie, how it's a pocket. Personally, depends on the project. Again, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. I liked it earlier when I just made it straight together and I stitched it with the fabric itself. Make sure your fabric is flat. You're going to want your fabric flat. As you stretch your elastic, take your time on this part. Take your time. You don't have to blaze through your machine. Just take your time on it. Do little bits at a time. Hold your fabric, stretch your elastic, send it through. Hold the next piece of fabric. Let your machine hold the old part. The part that you've already done, let your machine hold that piece. It just makes life easier. And then you have more hands to work with things. So, say my machine is holding it here. I hold here, stretch my fabric, send the next part through. Stretch your elastic as you go. That way you get the bungee. You get it to come in. And that's the part that tucks under your front seat. You need to have it that way. The very last step that you're going to do, I'm just going to remove that for right now and move my elastic, is when you are finished stitching the whole bottom piece together and adding your elastic. Don't do this before you add your elastic or your measurements won't be right. I hit my curtain, sorry. Is once you have your elastic and it's all the way up and you turn it right side out, and this is just the bottom piece again, just the bottom piece. So all the elastic will be in here. It'll be bunched up and cinched. Those are called pleats as well, and cinched. Some people do straight on pleats. This is not one of those projects. So a pleat is where you fold, and then you would pin it. And you get like the back of a dress where it has a pleat in the back of a dress, or at the side of a shirt where it folds in on itself and then reopens. That's called a pleat. This is not one of those projects. You need to have the elastic. so you can't try to shortcut that portion. So once you have your elastic all cinched in, you're going to get that old piece. The old one that still has those 2 pieces of elastic. You're going to start it off in the middle, find your middle spot. You don't have to pin it. You don't have to pin it, but you have your middle spot, and you're going to lay it down. That way, it gives you where your measurement, because both of them are cinched in, you're still going to have that cinch mark, but it's going to give you your measurement of where you need these to be secured. Just like we did the pockets on the back, you can cut it and not worry about trying to take out the stitching. It's not worth it. It's just a little tiny fraction of that strap that you're going to need later, the elastic strap that you pull down under the seat to make it all stay and sit proper. So you measure it out, you lay it down, and what I did earlier was I cut that piece off, but I left my fabric sitting here, and I left it in the same spot. You could even pin it. Give a pin on each side. And then cut this off, and you know exactly where you're going to pin it. Remember to put the end of your strap on the side where you folded over. So you want to make sure that all your jagged edges, your hems and everything all look the same. And this piece, because it's going to have tension, you are going to want to back and forth over it several times. And make sure you're using your zigzag other than on the back piece. And when you're done, you'll have a great seat cover. Have fun. Enjoy your project. If you get frustrated, watch the video again. It's fine. Obviously, it's there. That's what it's there for. As well as take a break. Go and get something. I always keep some water, some tea, something nearby. Go take a break. Have a drink. Have a snack. Go play with the kids, too. It's not going anywhere. It'll always be here. Go relax and enjoy your time. Have a great day, everybody.